If you've been hiding under a rock or not obsessively following all of the Wheel of Time Season 2 marketing like I have, you might have missed the new promotional Season 2 scene that was recently released on Prime Video at the end of the Season 1 finale. I made a summary and breakdown video about that preview scene that you should definitely check out if you haven't seen it yet. However, as much as I liked the tone and the quality of the new Season 2 scene, the more I thought about it, the more some things felt off to me, and I ended up with more questions and concerns, which I'm excited to get into. I'll also dive into some really awesome fan theories, including juicy speculation about the Forsaken, and I have more Easter eggs to share that I missed in my original breakdown. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. Spoilers for this video cover full TV show spoilers for the first season of The Wheel of Time on Prime, as well as full book spoilers through Book 3, The Dragon Reborn. I'll also be speculating about all of the promotional materials and theories we've gathered for Season 2 of The Wheel of Time so far. Even though Season 2 hasn't yet been released, there's a lot of promotional material to discuss. And I'll be discussing moderate book spoilers related to the known Forsaken in the series up through about Book 7, A Crown of Swords, and other minor spoilers related to characters and locations up through Book 5, The Fires of Heaven. I think you can probably watch this without any major story spoilers past Book 3, The Dragon Reborn. But as always, if you wish to remain completely spoiler-free, this video might not be for you. I wasn't sure before, but it has been confirmed that this scene is the very first cold open scene from Season 2, as reported by an IGN article, which I've linked in the description. As I said, I love the tone and quality of the scene. I was impressed by how well they were able to show the audience the famous Dark Friend social from the perspective of a naive outsider without over-explaining anything. I thought the scene built tension very well and was sneaky about providing clues and mysteries that I hope the general audience will pick up on. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt that some of their choices seemed a little like audience pandering or storytelling shorthand. I recognize that in order to adapt a massive series like The Wheel of Time, these kinds of choices are necessary, but it sometimes feels to me like maybe they don't trust the audience enough, and so they have to make pretty unrealistic or weird choices, like for example including a little girl at a Dark Friend meeting. Much like Ishii holding this girl's hand, I sometimes feel like the show writers make these kinds of odd choices in order to hold the audience's hands a little too much. While I stay mostly positive about the show, I'm like many of you, and I want to see as much as possible from the books on screen. I've always been concerned about the choices the show has made to kind of skip relevant information or to make changes. Like, I'm impressed and somehow disappointed by their ability to show so much while telling so little at the same time. This is of course coming from someone like me who, as you know, loves over-explaining all of the details about everything all of the time. If I had my way, we'd probably get 15 minutes of Loyal exposition in every episode, and we'd get 10 to 12 episodes minimum for every book in the series. I recognize this isn't realistic. Interestingly, some of my YouTube commenters felt the exact opposite about this scene. Some thought that the scene had too much exposition and was too heavy-handed. Obviously, the writers can't please everyone, and I know they're making this show for a much wider audience than us rabid book fans, and they're limited by the number of episodes they can make. Thankfully, just like everything in the show, it turns out after a little digging, there are actually a ton of really amazing details that once again prove that the show writers have not just read the books, but they're putting a staggering amount of time and effort into the little things to prove that they're thinking ahead and have a love for the source material. While I still think that showing this scene from this little girl's perspective was a brilliant way for the writers to give the audience a sense of confusion, mystery, and dread, the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was ridiculous to have a little girl here at all. On the surface, it seems very irresponsible to bring your daughter to a Dark Friend meeting. Many of us speculated that the girl and her mother probably came from the Traveling People, or Tuatha'an. The girl seems to have an Irish accent, like we've also heard from the Traveling People, and they both appear to have colorful clothing that matches the look of the Tuatha'an. Some eagle-eyed viewers from Dragonmount even pointed out that this design and color on the mother's dress is a direct match from a part of this Tinker's clothing in Season 1. So I was asking myself, why would a Tinker mother bring her daughter along to this meeting? And how did they even arrive? The more I thought about it, the more I disliked this concept of a Tinker mother bringing her daughter. However, it turns out that even this might have a book explanation, and this girl and her mother might not be Tuatha'an. It's possible that they come from Amador, in Amadisia. Twitter user Marcus Hong made this amazing discovery. Remember, the building is shaped like a six-pointed star, and there are six-pointed star designs on the door. Marcus Hong pointed out that the flag of Amadisia contains a six-sided star design, with a red thistle leaf in the center. This is called the Thistle and Star. What's more, Amadisia is just south of the Mountains of Mist, and as pointed out by John from What Up, doesn't this location look like it could be south of the Mountains of Mist? Without giving away specific story spoilers, Marcus Hong on Twitter also reminded us that in Book 5, some members of the Black Aja actually stayed in the home of a rich merchant dark friend in Amadisia. And finally, what really seals this theory for me is that Marcus pointed out that we know the costume designers for the Wheel of Time show were inspired by Romanian costumes for parts of this region between Almouth Plain and Amadisia. While the design of the girl and mother's clothing does certainly appear to match the Tinker clothing in Season 1, it also very closely resembles these traditional Romanian costumes. Here's another image from the 13th Depository that shows the outfits from Almouth Plain as they're described in the books. Now, I know this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but it's likely that we'll be seeing scenes from Amadisia, which is the home base of the White Cloaks, and further northwest in Almouth Plain, which is where the Seanchan start the return. Marcus Hong made this final observation. My guess is that the show folks have moved this important meeting from the mountains of Shayol Ghul to the manor house of this dark friend, whose daughter is there because it's her home. Mom sent her outside to play while the adults had a meeting. Great theory, Marcus. I completely agree, and it makes me feel much better about why this little girl was even there in the first place. Even if this turns out not to be the case, this is my headcanon now. Another thing that sort of bothered me after rewatching the clip was that nobody reacts to this little girl entering during the meeting. And then when Ishamael does escort her out, they all just sit there, almost as if they're petrified. It also bothered me that Padan Fain lifted his hood and looked straight at the girl, while everybody else, including the mother, didn't seem to acknowledge her at all. It felt like more audience pandering to me. Why would he reveal his face in a secret meeting where everyone else was covering theirs? However, it dawned on me that not only are the Darkfens all probably absolutely terrified, but they might not be physically able to move. When we read this scene from Bor's perspective in Book 2, he's terrified. Basilmon gives them instructions as a group, then he also gives them individual instructions, and some of them are described as literally being lifted up into the air, as if being held by invisible bonds. For all we know, they're literally petrified in some way in this scene and can't move, except one of them. Perhaps we're starting to see Padan Fain's ability to fight against his ties to the Dark One, as his corruption from the Shatter Logok dagger becomes more potent. I actually love this little nod and smile from Padan Fain within that context, because it implies to me that he's able to fight against his oaths to the Dark One, and it makes this feel more like an act of defiance than just a blatant nod to fans. What do you think about this? Do you think I'm as crazy as Padan Fain? Okay, one last big theory about the Forsaken in the show before I wrap up this video. There's been a ton of discussion on Twitter and Discord about this from many different people. I can't possibly credit everyone, but a huge shout out to Taviran Tavern, Kevin Angus, and Koala Sadai for the following theories and ideas. If you're not a member of Twitter of Time and enjoy some really fun discussion like this, you really should join and follow all of us. I'll include links to the important threads in the description. As a reminder, here are the names of the 13 known Forsaken from the books. Now, if we look closely at the design on the seals, which I believe are not literal seals by the way, but just statues or representations of the actual seals that are likely scattered around the earth, but I digress. If you look closely, you'll see the ancient Aes Sedai symbol in the center, surrounded by an 8-pointed star and 8 unique symbols. It turns out these symbols existed on the seal on the ground at the Eye of the World in the Season 1 finale, but I never picked up on it before. Each of these symbols seems to directly correlate to one of these 8 statues of the Forsaken that were shown back in Episode 5 of Season 1. Here's a brightened and enhanced version of the seal and the statues. I've also rotated each unique symbol to make them easier to see. Based on these two things, I think it's very safe to say that the show will probably consolidate the 13 Forsaken in the books down to 8. I'm not sure yet if I think there's one seal for each Forsaken. If anything, this new clip makes it seem as if there's only 6 seals total, and one has already been broken. But I do like the idea that each of the Forsaken is locked behind a seal in one of the 8 corners of the world. Perhaps each of the Forsaken are locked in a different corner of the world, and this star symbol represents that. There's also 8 Ajas if you count the Black Aja, so 8 seals makes sense. Now, there has been a ton of fan discussion about which Forsaken will be cut and which will likely be kept for the show, and everyone seems to have a theory about this. With the help of my lovely friends online, I'm going to do my best to identify what some of these statues could be and which statues I think go with which symbol on the seal. Let's start with what seems to be the obvious one. This looks like a spider to me, and to many people. Moghedien is literally translated to mean spider in the Old Tongue, and just about all of us agree that Moghedien is essential to the story and to Nynaeve's arc, so she probably won't be cut. This one is less clear, but most of us think this symbol is a moon, which has direct correlation with Lanfear's character. We know Lanfear's not cut from the show because she's been cast and revealed in the latest teaser. We're probably going to be witnessing Ishamael freeing her early in Season 2. There is some debate about which of these 3 statuettes goes with this spider symbol. This one looks like it might have a spider symbol right on the chest, and if these aren't arms, they could be mandibles. But other people think this statue resembles fan art of Lanfear. On the other hand, these two could be Lanfear as well. I noticed that the headpiece looking thing on this statue kind of resembles the headpiece that we catch a brief glimpse of in this shot from the trailer, and I'm convinced this person in the trailer is Lanfear. So I'm going to assume that this statue is Lanfear for now, and this one with the spider-looking symbol is Moghedien. That means that this statuette might be Semirhage. She has what almost look like torture-type devices on her neck, and her eyebrows sort of resemble the symbol here, so I'll put her here, though I'm less sure about this one. Another symbol that just about everyone agrees on is that this looks mysteriously similar to the map of Tar Valon, if you know what I mean. I believe this busty statuette goes along with this, feminine symbol, and that these both represent Grandal. Grandal seems like another one that most of us agree should not be cut from the show. The only other one that I have confidence about is this one, which appears to be holding a guitar or a lyre. While I'm not 100% convinced that this symbol is a lyre as well, I like the idea, so I'm labeling this as Asmodean, who is a musician, and putting Asmodean's statue here with this symbol. The remaining ones are a bit trickier. It might be helpful to first narrow down which of the remaining Forsaken will likely be kept and which will be removed from the show entirely. Most of us agree that Agenor and Belthamel can be cut, as they die at the end of the first book anyway, and there was no sign of them in Season 1. Agenor's fondness for Shadowspawn could easily be transferred to another of the Forsaken, and I could definitely see them giving this to Ishamael instead, since he seems to enjoy petting Trollocs. Speaking of Ishamael, we already know he's in the show, so he'll obviously be staying. Most also agree that it makes sense to have 4 women and 4 men to balance out the 8 Forsaken. Since we already have Lanfear, Moghedien, Semirhage, and Grandal, Mesaana gets the cut. Mesaana doesn't do much in the series anyway, other than try to brainwash children into worshipping the Dark One or something, and it looks like Ishamael's got that covered as well. That leaves us with just Belal, Demandred, Ravine, and Samael. But there are only 2 remaining spots. I think we can all agree that Belal is the easiest of these 4 to remove, as he also barely does anything in the books, and he basically dies within 10 seconds of showing up. I actually like the idea that Belal's Netweaver reputation and ability to set traps would go nicely with Moghedien, who already is known for weaving webs and setting up traps in the shadows as well. I think of these remaining male Forsaken, that Ravine is probably the next easiest to cut. As much as I want to get more of Queen Morghese and her full storyline in the show, I believe her story will likely get cut down a lot. Also, another of the Forsaken could easily take Ravine's place if they do decide to keep Queen Morghese's story. I think these remaining 3 are more important to the overall story. So, which of these symbols and statuettes belong to Ishi, Demandred, and Samael? Well, that's certainly up for debate. Most agree that this squat-looking one with the angular beard and possibly a scar across his face is probably Samael. It goes very well with this fan art by Seamus Gallagher. Also, some people pointed out that this symbol might be similar to the 9 Bees of Ilion, which is a symbol we see on Tam and other Ilioner soldiers' armor in Season 1. While we know that Samael does eventually make it to Ilion, I have a hard time believing that the 9 Bees of Ilion symbol would have been something that was linked to Samael 3,000 years earlier in the Age of Legends. But for all we know, these symbols are just Easter eggs for us fans anyway, and aren't necessarily going to have any literal connections in the show. So Samael will go here because I can't think of a better symbol for him. That leaves us with these 2 statues and these 2 symbols. I think this statue definitely represents Ishamael. It looks like it has fiery eyes and a fiery mouth, and like he's wearing a mask to cover his true identity. Also, I just noticed that his statue is the only one that doesn't have its hands together, as if in worship or prayer. But anyway, I find it interesting that Ishamael, or Ba'alzamon, sees himself as the Dark One in the books, and he's the only one who doesn't appear to be worshipping or praying to a higher power. Maybe he really thinks he is the higher power. I love the look of this statue, which has kind of an Egyptian feel to it. I can't say why I think this is Demandred, except that he's the only one left, and I don't think he'll get cut. If anything, I'm hopeful that Demandred's role will be expanded for the show. As for these 2 symbols, there's been a ton of debate about which of these statues goes with which symbol. I and many others really like the idea that this infinity snake-like symbol should go along with Ishamael, since he's all about philosophy and killing the great serpent, which is time itself. On the other hand, Ishamael was standing on this symbol and didn't move from that spot the entire time he fought Rand at the Eye of the World. When Rand finally helped to free Ishamael, the cracks originated from this symbol where he was standing. Interestingly, the only difference between the seal symbol at the Eye of the World and this symbol is that the Aes Sedai symbol in the center is rotated in a way so that the bottom tip of the dragon's fang is pointed directly at the point where Ishamael was standing. In the new scene, the Aes Sedai symbol is rotated so that the dragon's fang points at what we've established as Semirhage. As a quick addendum, there's a new theory going around that I quite like that says that perhaps there is a seal for each Forsaken, and perhaps the point of the Flame of Tar Valon is pointing at the female Aes Sedai, whose seal it belongs to, here, and the tip of the dragon's fang is pointing to the male Aes Sedai to whom this seal belongs here. That would make this seal that the girl's looking at in this scene Lanfear's seal. I can't say for sure that all of this was intentional, but I really like the idea that Ishamael was standing on his own symbol, and this sort of X shape that goes through the center of this symbol does kind of resemble the folds of his cloak that are also shaped like an X on his statuette. So I'll put Ishamael here and Demandred here. Someone also pointed out to me that Demandred wears armor at one point in the series that's described as a sort of stacked coin armor, so this could possibly represent that. I wanted to add in a quick addendum here. As I was making this video, Koala Sadai on Twitter came up with some even more compelling arguments about how they're going to be combining or consolidating some of the different Forsaken. I'm not going to get into the weeds of this. You really should just check out this thread on Twitter, which I'll include in the description. But basically the theory is that the cracks on the seal from the end of episode 8 in season 1 actually help point towards which of the Forsaken will stay and which will be cut based on the symbols. It's a really compelling argument, and while I don't entirely agree with all of the statues and things, I think you should really check this out. Be sure to follow Koala Sadai and all these other wonderful people on Twitter for more amazing discussions like this. I know that was a lot of wild speculation. If nothing else, I think this proves that the people in charge of set design and props are really enjoying putting in little Easter eggs for us book readers, even if these details don't really matter in the long run. But of course I hope that they do. Wouldn't it be cool if each Forsaken has little designs in their costumes and locations that match these symbols in some way? Also, as I've now spent 2 full videos analyzing one scene, it occurred to me that I wouldn't be opposed to Prime just releasing every episode one scene at a time, so that I can spend more time looking at every detail and theorizing like a crazy person. In all seriousness, I love this kind of speculation, and I can't wait to do more of it as season 2 comes out. I have big plans for season 2, but I'm gonna have trouble zooming out to a macro view as I analyze each episode in the future, or my videos will never get finished. With that, I'll just say thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. And special thanks to my Patreon and YouTube supporters. I'll be donating all of your support money to the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes for the foreseeable future. So feel free to skip the middleman and donate directly to those good causes listed in the description below. Until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.